I'm Shivani Gupta, and welcome to the Ask Shivani podcast. I believe that one of the best presents that you can give yourself is time to be able to sit down and ask yourself some questions. I believe that the quality of the questions that you ask yourself will determine the quality of your life. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Ask Shivani podcast. Today, I am going to be speaking about a topic that's really touched me over the last few weeks. It's been something that's always been really important to me, but for some reason, it keeps dropping in where that sign is not so subtle. So I'm not sure if you have that experience where you start, they say you start thinking about a particular type of car, and then you see that car everywhere. You start thinking and humming a tune to a song, and then that song plays or somebody plays it for you. And so I won't get into the spiritual parts of that and the law of attraction and bringing that into your consciousness. What I really wanted to speak about today was that for me, one of the things that keeps dropping in more and more over the last few weeks is this notion of how much do you need? So I was driving by this particular path where I drop my kids off all the time, and I saw this sign go up talking about a particular book, and I thought, oh, that book looks like one of the authors that I've already read a book by. Anyway, it turns out that it was a different book, but they had the same last name. So I looked this book up, and then I got distracted, and then I didn't order it. And then I was speaking to a friend of mine, and she said, hey, she does some work with the Hunger Project, which their main aim and vision is to, I guess, end hunger and have nobody starving around the world. And she's been doing work with them for a number of years. And she started telling me about this book. And this is not like weeks out. This is like within a day and a half of me seeing this particular sign. And I went, so I had this great conversation with her, and I told her about what had happened when I was driving, and I saw this ad come up. And then again, got distracted and didn't think about it. And then I was looking at a particular course, like a musical theatre drama course for my daughter that she wanted to do. And I looked it up, and again, this author popped up. And this guy was not, related anything to what I was searching. And happened to be that he was going to be in Brisbane, with the city that I live in Australia, and coming in to give a lecture. I was unfortunately away that day and I couldn't attend the lecture, but I have a rule of three, and I've spoken about this in other podcasts, that if three things happen within a very short space of time, I take that as a sign. I think that there are signs everywhere, but sometimes we just forget to read them. So I took it as a bit of a sign to go, I'm going to explore this book. So I ordered it for myself, and I also ordered it for a couple of other people that I knew that would get a lot out of it. So I started reading this book, and you're probably wondering by now, Shivani, give us the name of this book. The author is Peter Singer, and he has written many books, but this particular book that pops up with this red cover and this hand reaching into the heart is The Life That You Can Save. And having just exited out of one of my businesses and now wondering what takes next outside of my speaking and podcasting and mentoring world, what other things might want to do, he started to speak about how much do we need, and whether we see a bigger picture in the world in terms of the money that we earn, and then being able to donate more. But also, when we donate more, donating it to charities that are well researched and thought through, where we know that that money is going to be used in good stead, rather than be wasted on administration and other things. And so as I start to read this book, it's really starting to challenge me in terms of the impact on the world, the legacy on the world. And it's also starting to get me to question, when you're being a bit altruistic and you're giving some of your money away, and some of the people that do that, do you want to be known for it? Do you not want to be known for it? Are there some benefits? Are there some downsides? So it's a really interesting exploration in terms of, are you giving enough, and whether you're, want to be or should be giving enough. But it also then looks at how you give that. So I'm about 3/4 of the way through the book, and I'm really enjoying it. And then I happened to go to a conference. Finally, conferences are live again rather than just online. And I happened to go to this conference on this beautiful island with some extraordinary speakers. And there was a couple of speakers I was really looking forward to listening to their wisdom and what they might have to share and talking about that. What I didn't expect was this one particular speaker that got up on day 2 of the conference and started to speak about giving. And again, this, this messaging that keeps coming in, these signs that keep coming in. And I want to mention his name because I'd love for you to actually go and have a bit of a look at some of the extraordinary work that he's doing. And his name is Matt Botel. And Matt, and this is again my experience and my take on what he spoke about and the takeaways that I had. But Matt shared his journey of being an engineer and then that role and that company, his role was made redundant and he had these engineering skills and he didn't know what to do. And one of the things he wanted to do was utilize some of the great training that he'd had. And he started to utilize some of that training and started to build, little bionic arms, like arms that he could build for a fraction of the cost of what you could traditionally buy them for. And using these skills, he started to build these little hands, and bionic hands, and then literally post them to a child that would finally, perhaps for the first time in their life, and have that experience of being able to do simple things like open a bottle top, be able to hold something, be able to touch their parents. He also designed them in a way that they were really cool for kids. So they were, had little Iron Man and other superpowers. And so the kids felt really excited about wearing them rather than this really boring, bionic hand that they had. And what really touched me was that he made them completely free for the recipient. And, in my business head, I'm going, well, this business model doesn't make any sense. This doesn't make any sense. How does he live? He's married, he's got kids, and how can he do all of these and pay for parts and, pay for office space and do all of this? And how does he build enough of them there? So I started to listen to Matt, and then I reached out to him a little bit later and had a conversation with him. He is so clear that his part of his purpose on this planet is to really do that. And so his business is called free3dhands.org. I'm going to put that in the chat. At the end of it, I'd love for you to check out this particular website. But one of the things that it's really got me thinking a lot about is how does this model work? Like, how do we make enough money? And I know that people, when I read about the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who are doing some extraordinary work trying to eradicate things like malaria around the world, when I read about Warren Buffett, who's given a lot of his wealth away and billions of dollars, not into the Gates Foundation, but other places, these people have made significant wealth. And then once they've reached that, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where they're very successful and they have millions or billions of dollars in the bank, they are then utilizing some of those funds and those earnings and those profits into that. That model's always made sense to me. But the part when I'm reading Peter Singer's book is not making sense to me is, what if you're earning $70,000 a year and you've got a partner and you've got kids at school and you know that you only need to live about $65,000 or $66,000, for example, to live, but those $3,000 or $4,000, they're not surplus, like, because you kind of, your money is just getting you enough through what you need. So wouldn't you be saving the $4,000 or $5,000 or $50,000, whatever extra that you have outside of the living expenses that you need, and getting ahead in your mortgage or using it for a holiday or doing other things? So the part that Peter Singer is really challenging me to think about is, well, how much do you really need? Okay, so let's say if it's only $4,000, that makes sense to get ahead. But what if you're earning $50,000 extra? What if you're earning $60,000 extra? Which, a lot of us in the Western world do. Like, we have extra money. And if we decide to, only even donate $1,000 a year, how many kids or a particular project that you might be passionate about, whether it's animals or kids or bionic hands or whatever it might be that you're really passionate about, how many different things could it support? And then meeting somebody like Matt, who is takes that even further, where he's gone, look, I'll just work out other things, but I know I can build this for a fraction of the cost. And the joy on that child's face to be able to receive this bionic hand, and the joy that it brings me, and the joy that it brings to not only the child, but also for that whole family, for something that they might have either been born without a hand or fingers, or they've had an accident, for them to be able to lead a more fuller life, and that joy that it brings to them. That was his sole purpose. And I don't have any answers on this particular podcast. I just wanted to share with you, some of you that are listening might already be involved with a particular charity that you give to. And the Peter Singer Works really questions, do you know how this charity is structured? Do you know when you ask them where this money is particularly going? So if you already give to that, learn more about that particular charity. He also suggests a lot of charities that certain people who got very passionate about, after reading some of his work and meeting him, then started to put together certain charities that have already been checked out, and he lists them in his book, and you can check that out on his website as well. So if you just go to Peter Singer and then check that out, or go to the book, that there is a lot of organisations that have already been tested and tried, so to speak, where you can do that. But if you don't do any of the donations, like, what extra money do you have? And, could you give $1,000 away, or could you give more away? Could you find some passion projects where you could live really well? You could still travel, you could still pay a bit more of your mortgage off, but you could also still help the world to equalize it, and to be able to help other people that needs it happening. And, when I heard Matt speak, being a mum and having fully able children, but also having worked with, kids with disabilities, having friends that are, Paralympians, and just really his story and his messaging and what he was doing and his purpose really touched me. So I got up at this conference. I got the conference organizer's permission, and Matt didn't know about this, but I just got up and said, look, I'm going to donate $1,000. There's no pressure, but if you could, and if you were really touched, because a number of us were talking about this at morning tea, it'd be fantastic if you were willing to donate whatever money. I've just put $1,000 down, because I know that will support this many hands and this many children, and that would be great. And what was really interesting that happened was I had a colleague with me, and he got some people to stand up. Wasn't sure if that was the right thing, but because the idea wasn't to embarrass anybody in the room. But what happened as a result of it, and I don't know the exact number, but there's been now thousands of dollars raised. And there's been, somebody that's, volunteered to go on the board. I'm talking about this in this podcast. There've been other LinkedIn articles that people have written, because he touched a lot of people, because he's an amazing human and he's doing some amazing work. And so this notion of wanting to do more in the world, this notion of, if you don't have that voice, and if you're not a Matt Botel, that I know I'm not today, finding people that you can support and do something with is a really, really fascinating thing. And so I'd really encourage you to, if you're already doing some work, the first step out of today would be to dig a little bit deeper and know where this money's being used, and really even tying in more of your passions deeper into that. The second is, if you don't have that, then find something that you could contribute a little bit to. And the third part, you may or may not agree with, I just think when I come across people doing incredible work, I want to talk about that. And I don't need the accolades for the $1,000 that went into free3dhands.org, but I wanted to help Matt beyond the $1,000. And I wanted other people to know about that. So speaking about other heroes, speaking about other people that are doing some amazing work, and linking them into the right channels, is a really good way to be able to help other people, maybe not exponentially, but certainly at a scale. And the more that you talk about, people that are doing extraordinary work and finding support, whether it's financial or mental or, through boards, etc., comes in really, really handy. So, yeah, so the aim of this podcast was just to share these things that have been happening and these signs that have been happening. I'm not sure what the other part of Peter Singer's book reveals, but I'm fascinated in terms of reading that and coming up with a couple of actions in terms of what I can incorporate. So I would so encourage you to check out his book, Peter Singer, and I would so encourage you to look at Matt Botel in free3dhands.org and we will publish all of that links at the bottom. Have a fantastic day. I'm Shivani Gupta, and you've been listening to the Ask Shivani podcast, where I got to ask some questions. Thank you so much for listening. Please follow Ask Shivani on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And if you haven't done so, please go to the Apple Podcast and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. It would mean a lot. Thank you.